Now, on Friday, the 22nd of July, the National Service Scheme will be having a stakeholders. They will be holding a stakeholders conference and to discuss how the operations have been so far, the way forward, and the challenges. I have with me in the studio the executive director of the scheme, who is Mr. Vincent Senam Kubuanu. He is seated right next to me. Good morning. Good to see you, sir.
Good morning.
And welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
Next to him is his right-hand man, who is a public relations officer, head of public relations. He is Mr. Ambrose Intiwa Jr. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Welcome. Well, we are going to talk about the stakeholders conference, but of course we can't have you here without talking about the scheme. How is it doing? How is it going?
Well, Gifty, thank you and good morning to your viewers. The Ghana National Service Scheme has a mandate to deploy graduates from our tertiary institutions to various organizations across the country, especially emphasis on the rural areas where human resource is deficient or we lack human resource. For the past several years, we've been doing very well, but we are unable to do critical assessment of our work without the user agencies also giving us feedback. And the import of our stakeholders conference is basically to take from them how they feel about the scheme and what new strategies we can adopt to ensure that our delivery is of standard.
Right. Right. Let me go to Ambrose and then come back to you. You know, during my time, we used to have national service after sixth form and then after the tertiary. So what changed?
There was a government policy, especially when the education system changed.
Right.
You know, the A-level system was phased out.
Right.
So you couldn't post A-level students. And therefore, there was a need for us to go back and have only post-tertiary national service. The government decision was to then change national service from 2 years to 1 year. And that is how come the sixth form issue came out.
And do you think it's working well?
Yes.
You think it was a good decision?
Yes, it was. Some people thought that it was an avenue for them to hold on for 1 year. Don't forget that there was a time that we had backlog of students for 1 year. So it served a purpose for that. But it was a temporary thing.
Right.
Once the system rolled on, there was a need for us to come back and then ensure that the original program actually continued.
So do you think that, I know you're going to have a stakeholders conference to really assess it, but from where you sit, do you think it has served any purpose, the National Service Scheme, in this country?
Well, Gifty, the Ghana National Service Scheme would serve a better purpose, but for the undue interventions and interruptions of the work we do by well-placed people who want the awards or relatives to serve in some particular areas. That's the bane of the challenge we face, defeating the philosophy of service.
And hold on to that. So let's go back to, so what is the main purpose? What purpose is the National Service Scheme supposed to serve?
Well, it's to build in our young citizens, especially those who have the privilege of tertiary education, the spirit of volunteerism and nationalism. You know that the higher you go in education, the further you are from the people. People see education as a privilege that after acquiring knowledge, they must dictate what they want to do. But the scheme is supposed to orientate our minds to the need for education to help provide solutions to the problems we have. Gifty, it's been very disturbing that we have to rely on Cuban doctors, for instance, who have language barriers to go into our communities to provide health service. When indeed we are training doctors in hundreds and they will not go because they don't want to go and they think that because some facilities are not there, they will not go. I mean, so national service will draw you closer to the challenges, and I think that we all will have to be patriotic to push this country's development agenda forward.
And Ambrose, do you think that it's an issue of we not understanding the purpose of the National Service Scheme, or we just don't see how that can benefit us. That's why we're running away from going to rural communities and, you know, the hinterland to go serve our people.
It could be in both ways. Some may not understand the purpose. It is our responsibility to explain to them. Others know. They understand the purpose, yet deliberately they decide not to go. Sometimes we discuss some of these issues at management level, and then we make references to what happens in Nigeria, for instance, where people are proud to go to areas other than their home states or regions, yes. But in Ghana, these problems come up, like the executive director said. If you were to visit our office during posting time, you will see parents. You see a lot of people who come there with all sorts of excuses, and that, no, change my nephew, change my son, change this one, change. So it's like sometimes even the service personnel will want to go, their parents will not want them to go. So these are the problems that we face. So it's not a matter of that they do not understand per se. They just don't want their children to go, because some of them will say that, oh, there's no water, there's no electricity.
Exactly, that's what I was coming to. There's conditions at the various places, so parents are protective of their wards.
No, Gifty, the fact is that you are adults to do national service. Parents' influence on their wards or their children ceases after 18. The law the state takes precedence over above 18 years. The challenge we face basically is the lack of understanding, and that is the bane of our stakeholders conference. You know, one of the cardinal objectives of the National Service Scheme is to provide feedback to training institutions about job market demand or labor demands. Right. If you do our work diligently, the training institutions will be better placed to produce people that are needed in the job market. Right. But because of these distortions, we are not able to do that. But I tell you, for the past 2 years, we've been trying as much as possible to bring some sanity to the system. And I have to commend some institutions like Parliament, for instance, who are doing well to encourage the scheme to stick to its principle. Right. The objective, and if you go back to 1980, when the law establishing the scheme or reorientating the establishment of the scheme emphasized, was to enable young Ghanaians to go to critical areas that serve as the food basket or that drives the economy, so that they know how the system or the economy runs there. National service is actually not an office work. Right. It's a field work that is expected to put our young people on the move. And I can tell you, 50%, we might be more than 50%. Many service personnel who go to rural areas, like in schools without teachers, are doing very, very well. Right. Some of the directors of education will tell you, but for service personnel, there would not have been this secondary school running. Right. It's something we take encouragement from.
True. That's true. That's true. Ambrose, I know your boss is trying to introduce a whole set of new rules and all that, but we'll get back to that. But, you know, another problem is when you go to Nigeria, for example, they take the national service period into consideration when you're being employed. But here, it doesn't seem to matter. When employers are asking for experience, national service does not come in anywhere. They don't even consider your national service period.
You see, we have a general problem with going by the rules. The law says that if you have not done your national service, if you have not done and completed successfully, you cannot even employ yourself. You must not be employed by anybody. And if you are employed by any company or any institution for that matter, there are sanctions. Just that, as I indicated, sometimes we flout some of these things. So if institutions were to be working, I'm sure we would even be better off than Nigeria, because the laws are very, very clear. It's just that sometimes we play lip service to some of these things and allow things to go the way they go.
All right.
Gifty, even the law states, Act 426, it states that if you are supposed to employ me after service, your 1 year national service is seen as probationary period. Yes,
Okay.
if you did
So
your
there's
national
no need for me to do the 6-month
probation anymore, because that is what the law states.
Right.
So that is one of the provisions. And also, it's in Ghana that employers don't look for employees that have done voluntary service, for instance. In
Right.
developed countries, it's an added advantage over those who have not done service or voluntary service. If you serve in challenging communities, the employer sees you to be an asset. You will be able to own that company,
Right.
work to improve the condition of that company. So the orientation, that's why we have this stakeholders conference,
right.
for them to see what the provisions of the law is and what they can benefit from personnel when they are deployed properly.
Right.
You know, so there are a lot to it. And we think that it's a canker that we all have to work at, and that is why we want them all to come together.
Some say you are of the old school, so you are bringing back the old-time national service agenda, getting them onto the field to work, getting them into carrying things and the farms, getting them on the street to work on potholes and all that.
Gifty, United Kingdom, actually, Britain colonized Ghana.
Yeah.
National service was there several years. It went off. I can tell you, David Cameron is introducing national service.
Yeah.
And so we should ask, why not? I had several calls from the Commonwealth Secretariat. They read a lot about what we're doing for international service. And they want to use Ghana National Service as a model to introduce these programs in other Commonwealth countries. Why is it so? It's because of the innovations we are bringing into the scheme.
Right.
I can tell you, this year, agriculture, for instance, the Ministry of Agri is supporting us in cultivation maize, for instance. And we are into close to 2,000 acres. And we hope to harvest over 40,000 bags of maize this year to support the school feeding program. This is voluntary, and you should come to the farms to see how personnel spend their weekends working enthusiastically from 6 a.m. sometimes to 5 p.m. without a fee. If we are able to build intrinsic motivation in our young people, the challenges we face as a state will not need foreigners, Chinese, Indians, or whatever to help solve our problem. So you see, the challenge we have is also the education. This ivory tower syndrome must give way to community-based education. We don't have challenge deploying people from UDS to do national service, because before they complete their period of training, they have understanding of community needs, because they spend time in the communities helping solve teething problems in communities.